So I came up with a different P, just kind of did a whole nother version of it, a little bit different. It doesn't, only has the rounded corner on the top left. It doesn't have any of the rounded corners. I'm just seeing which one I think would work a little better. And I think we can probably have two different variations. Because one thing I want to do is add an angle, because it's a little too right angled. So let's add, we'll take a direct selection tool, zoom in. I'm just going to isolate that one anchor and then drag it up to create a little bit of a, actually I'm going to do the other one. Just a little bit of an angle to add something kind of cool and modern to it. So that is an option. I'm going to keep both available to drag and use for different, when we start doing our typography, one might work over the other. So now that we have these two, I'm just going to drag them over here, make them smaller, and now we're ready to kind of pair it with our typography. So let's go ahead and take a P that we like. I'll take this one over here with the angle. Oops, I need to group those. So right click group, copy and paste, drag that over. So now let's bring in our type. We no longer need, zoom in, no longer need our P. So now we have Ikes. So let's see what font would work well here. Make this a little bit bigger. This is kind of where all the magic happens in logo design. So here's something I want to do. I want to create a little bit of a grid. So I'm going to view show grid. And let's kind of line this up so it has some kind of order. So I'm going to line that up to the top left of that grid or that box. And I'm going to line this up as well. What I want to do, I want to line up the bottom of this to the bottom of the eye. So the bottom of this little lip of the pipe. That just helps make the logo look a little more cohesive. Everything is better on a grid, so that's great. So I can just go ahead and toggle my grid off. And I think we definitely need to work on the kerning. So the spacing between the characters is the kerning. So we can do that a couple of ways. We can keep all this as one block of text and just manually reduce the kerning by highlighting 2, going to character and reducing the tracking. We can keep doing that, which is nice because it stays editable text if we really want it to stay editable. Or we can copy and paste each letter out and we can have total control over each character. So copying, pasting each character out, creating its own. And this is what I prefer because I love having ultimate control over each character. Okay, let's go ahead and line this up over the original. So there we go. So these are all individual editable characters. So now I can just take the arrow keys and kind of adjust the kerning manually. You don't want it to be so tight. And you want to have some similar spacing. So what I like to do is take the rectangle tool. It's a really simple way to do it. It's not too technical. Make that a different color. And I'm going to copy and paste this and get the spacing to be correct. So I can move that S over to the right a little bit. There we go. And maybe we put the same spacing here, but that might be too much because there's a lot of white open space here in this character, so that's okay to leave that not the same spacing. Really eyeball this. There's a science to it, but there's also a subjectivity. So just kind of take a look at it. Do you like it? Do you feel like this is too much spacing? It doesn't have to be scientific. Actually, it's better if it's not all perfect, in my opinion. Some people would disagree, but I think it's good to have just eyeball it. Does it feel good? Does it work? And with this extra space down here, and actually this S, and this is me being very picky with typography, I would like to have that be flat against instead of curved, and so we can change that next. So I've decided to not flatten the S because I tried to manually flatten the S and it wasn't working, so this is okay. But that doesn't mean, let me toggle off the grid, that doesn't mean we can't experiment with another font for the S. So let's make that smaller. I'm going to duplicate it, and I haven't outlined this yet, so I can still change it. Let's do Railway. Railway is another great font I'll use often. That's too thick, but extra bold. That's just right. Let me align this perfectly. Just kind of testing out another font to see if I like the S better, and that looks too different. So I'm just going through my entire process. This is exactly what I do But with real world designs, I'll just pick at it. Even if I feel like I'm wasting time, you're trying it out. There could be a match. And maybe trying a different font, it's too different. Fonts can be very particular, so it may not be. Let me try Helvetica. Do I have a bold Helvetica? Yeah, it's just too different. So I think this S is fine for now. We can always go in and tweak it just a little bit if it really, really bothers me. So right click, create outlines. Oops. So now I can edit all the anchor points, get my direct selection tool. Maybe I just need to bring it out a little more, bring this in. Maybe that'll make it feel better. Plus it's playing off the angle of the P, so that's cool. I just brought that angle out, brought that in. Great. I do feel like the wideness of the P might be too wide compared to the other characters. So I'm just doing a rectangle tool and testing it out. So that's kind of the average width of the P. So it is a little bit longer, but that is kind of an accent, so that might be okay. The whole time I'm thinking about using this white space for the plumbing word, so that's why you kind of see this gaping hole. So let's maybe tuck that over to the left just a little bit. And maybe make the S just a little bit bigger. No, let's keep it there. Let's copy and paste plumbing. Let's see how we can, oh, that fits nicely already with the spacing between the characters and the kerning. Perfect. So here's what we do. I create a lot of different versions of this, so let's tuck that away. Let's copy and paste and play around with different kerning and sizes. So let's make that even smaller. Let's try Railway for this font. Maybe not black, maybe a little bit of a lighter weight. And let's increase the tracking. So right now it's 500. Let's try 800. See if that looks good. Make it a little bit smaller. I'm trying to let pikes really stand out compared to the plumbing. Plumbing is important, but pikes is the most important. You know, plumbing is not super exciting. So we want to have some contrast between the main company name and what they do. We definitely want that to be readable, but having that nice big contrast looks nice. So let's continue to mess around. Let's do a tighter tracking. See, it gets a little too big. It starts to fight and compete with the pikes, and that's not good. So I think what we had before, I think that's looking nice. I like the Railway font here. As opposed to using the same font, we use Open Sans on the top and Open Sans on the bottom. I actually like using a different font. Usually I don't pair two sans serifs together, but this looks nice. This looks better. Let me do one more iteration. Iteration is just a fancy name for another version. So just doing different iterations. I just put a little more white space here so it doesn't feel like this P is fighting with this P. So you notice a little bit of spacing. Makes it look nice. So I think we need one more thing. So we need an apostrophe. If it's Pike's Plumbing, I do believe we'll need an apostrophe there, so we need to make room for that. Now, apostrophes are not always the coolest looking things. They kind of mess up words sometimes. As a designer, I hate working with them, but I think we can do something to make it look good.